Welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And the movie I want to talk about today is The Hustler, starring Paul Newman as Fast Eddie Felson, one of his signature roles. It also stars Jackie Gleason, who you see in the background there, George C. Scott, and Piper Laurie. Directed by Robert Rossen. This was, I think, his second to the last movie. And he wrote and directed it from a novel by Walter Tevis, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Fast Eddie Felson is an iconic figure in cinema history, I believe, and he's a pool hustler, but he's sort of escaped the small-time pool hustling, which can be very dangerous, as we see later in the film. But he's on the rise. He's well known. He's managed by a small-time backer, Charlie, beautifully played by Myron McCormick. But Fast Eddie's dream is beating Minnesota Fats. That's his whole focus in life, that he can beat Minnesota Fats, who is considered to be the premier pool player of his time. Of course, this is well before ESPN and the Las Vegas pool days. Pool halls were considered very depraved places when you're growing up, even worse than a bar. Of course, most bars did have pool tables. But for Fast Eddie, success is all. That's all the meaning to life there is. And we see an opening match where he actually gets to play Minnesota Fats. And Minnesota Fats is a fictional character. I think most people thought he actually existed. I know I did. And Minnesota Fats is played by Jackie Gleason, who really fits the bill to a T. So this first opening pool match between Fast Eddie and Minnesota Fats establishes the authenticity. These guys are real pool players. And Jackie Gleason was a proficient pool player. Excuse me, Paul Newman was not. And so he had Willie Mosconi, who was the most famous pool player of his time, and who would appear on a lot of variety shows. Johnny Carson, he would set up trick shots and have Carson try to make the trick shots. So he was well known. And so Newman put a pool table in his dining room and had Willie Mosconi spend about 2 months with him to make him look like he was an actual pool player. So the opening sequence is 20 minutes, and it does go by pretty quick. It's well edited by D.D. Allen, who's on the commentary, the editor of many Martin Scorsese movies. But the climactic scene is going to be much shorter. So we've already established in our own minds as viewers that these guys know how to play pool. But in between these two matches, there is a romance, and I was surprised how moving and poignant and tender this romance was amongst two damaged souls. Piper Laurie, also one of the stars of the movie, she sees hope in Eddie. They meet by chance in a bus station in the middle of the night. She is a damaged soul. She is an alcoholic. She has a limp, but she's quite beautiful. Piper Laurie is a beautiful, beautiful actress. And she sees hope in Eddie. These are the only scenes that weren't filmed on location in her apartment. They were filmed on a studio. This film was filmed totally on location besides excuse me, these scenes in her apartment. And so there's the authenticity. Sarah sees hope to bring Fast Eddie a realization of being an authentic human being. She sees those in orbit, and George C. Scott enters the scene as Bert, a big-time pool backer, the backer, it seems, of Minnesota Fats, in fact. Bert sees potential in in Fast Eddie, but he says he's a loser. He doesn't have the coolness to, he's too emotional. He doesn't have the coolness that Minnesota Fats has in Spades. But Sarah, as Eddie gets into Bert's orbit now, Sarah sees these people as dead souls. They're dead inside. And George C. Scott even admits, I'm in it for glory and money. That's all there is glory and money. So you could see this movie as a development more than just a pool match, a couple of compelling pool matches. You can see it as a story of the development of Eddie's character. In fact, in the commentary with Dee Dee Allen and many others who were involved in the movie, that looking back, I think from the early 2000s, you see that as what they felt the movie was about. Becoming an authentic human being. And authenticity is so much part of it. As I said, this mostly was filmed on location. In fact, the Ames Pool Hall was right off of Broadway. So we see the grittiness of New York street life. And we feel as if we are in the pool hall as spectators, of this dramatic struggle of Eddie's to become what he believes to be a success. And Robert Rossen, the writer-director, he grew up in New York City as a very poor person. As a teenager, he was a pool hustler. And he hustled cars and other forms of gambling as well. So he knows the atmosphere. The movie is based on a novel by Walter Tevis, and Tevis too grew up as a pool hustler. So we have that level of authenticity, and Tevis and Robert Rossen apparently were alcoholics, and alcohol plays a huge role in the hustler. In this milieu, alcohol is constantly you wonder how they can even stand up. So Tevis wrote this novel. He later, because of the success of the movie, he later wrote a sequel, The Color of Money, where Paul Newman comes back as Fast Eddie, Tom Cruise being his protege. And it was directed by Martin Scorsese, as a matter of fact. Tevis also wrote, I think, 6 science fiction novels, one of which was The Man Who Fell to Earth, which I did read the novel, and it's a terrific novel. I didn't read The Hustler, unfortunately, but he is a very good writer, and The Man Who Fell to Earth ultimately becomes a story of alcoholism as well. And I mentioned the commentary, and it's really an essential commentary as to the making of the film, full of interesting tidbits. And Jackie Gleason, Dee Dee Allen, Gleason was so fit for this role. I mean, he was known as a broad comedian. Obviously, Ralph Cramden was his signature role, but he was on television a lot. In the Jackie Gleason show, sometimes I think it was called Your Show of Shows, Away We Go. He was famous for that. So it was, when I saw it on TV, probably in 62, 63, I was really astounded by Gleason playing this kind of serious role, and he plays it beautifully. And Dee Dee Allen, the editor, recognized that, so she uses him as sort of the foil, the contrast, his acting style being, he just becomes the character. We don't see any huffing and puffing as intense and, studio trained actors like Paul Newman or George C. Scott, who are both brilliant in the film, don't get me wrong. This is, to me, this is the best role that Paul Newman ever played. He had already had a huge hit with Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and a couple other films before this, but this is the one I think that really established him, at least in my mind, as such a compelling actor who, yes, he does inhabit his role, but in here you don't see, he captures all the subtlety of the role, whereas George C. Scott is basically playing the devil. And he does that very, very well indeed. But they're red hot actors, whereas Gleason is white hot. He's compelling, and so Dede Allen, in some of the climactic scenes, he keeps cutting back to him to give us the contrast with somebody who just accepts what's coming. You know, he doesn't fight against it, whereas Fast Eddie has a tendency to fight against the reality of this murky and sometimes very dangerous world that he's become involved with. And there's some great side characters as well. Many of them, you have to look quick and you're going to spot Vincent Gardenia as a bar owner. And you have to look even quicker to spot Jake LaMotta as a bartender. Jake LaMotta, raging bull. So the film is simply filled with these kind of authentic characters. They all look like they belong in this world. This is a 2012 Blu-ray. I don't believe this film has been restored or updated to 4K UHD, but this looks absolutely beautiful. And it comes with a very strange booklet, because the booklet is actually attached to the package itself, but it's full of great pictures. Piper Laurie and Paul Newman in a very tender moment, and a very pensive Newman. Geez, he looks so great here, doesn't he? He was such a good-looking guy. And various scenes. Here's Gleason as Minnesota Fats. Just a brilliant performance, and he actually got some more roles, serious roles, as a result. Here's Newman with a very luminous Piper Laurie. And another tender moment. Here, a not so tender moment when Newman has to resort to small-time hustling, which again, a very dangerous profession. George C. Scott. I think this is, I know Scott was in Anatomy of a Murder in '59, so this was not one of his first films. Here's the director, Robert Rossen. Robert Rossen has an interesting history himself, because he was part of the Red Scare. He was supposed to be called to testify in front of the HUAC committee that was, basically blasting and leading to, people losing their jobs. But he never did testify, and he went on making movies, but eventually he did testify. And by that time, he did name names. It was later in the hearings, so all these names had been named before. And he made rather indifferent movies, some international movies, but The Hustler was basically his return to mainstream Hollywood. And here's Myron McCormick, here's Vincent Gardenia, and Paul Newman hustling a trick shot that, Willie Moscone would set up these trick shots. He was on the set through all the pool scenes, and he would instruct the actors, if you just hit the ball right here, it should work. And I guess it did more times than not. And also in that booklet, they give you some very good biographical information on all the actors. Okay, that's The Hustler. I know it's been quite a while since I have released the video due to illness. I'm determined to keep this YouTube channel going. My goal is to do one a week. I've not been able to do that yet, but who knows, maybe in the future I will. So thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.